Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Scott Fisher with Options for Senior Living. We're excited today to have our third webinar in this series we've been putting together. Today, my guest is Zach Shaw. Zach's the Chief Operating Officer for Affordable Home Care Solutions. Zach's been with the company now 8 years. And Zach is also serving as a board member for the Arizona In-Home Care Association. ASNAHA has been the trade association in Arizona for, holy smokes, how many years ASNAHA been around?
Since 2007.
So makes it, I guess, about 12 or 13 years. ASNAHA, Zach serves as the vice president of ASNAHA now, and we're going to get into this a little bit today. Zach, it's nice to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Scott and Stacy, and Options for Senior Living for having me. Thank you guys for joining us and letting me speak a little bit here. For those of you who don't know me and my operation, I'm with Affordable Home Care, run by a registered nurse. That's kind of what separates us in the industry, is that we are nurse directed, and that kind of led me to my position with ASNAHA and everything that I stand for in this industry. When I joined Affordable Home Care back in 2010, so that's 8 years ago now. I didn't know anything much about home care at all, and having a nurse lead home care, didn't quite understand what that was all about. And as I got further and further into it, I realized how important home care is in the healthcare continuum, and how vulnerable the people are that we take care of in our community, and some of those pitfalls and things that can happen that can go really wrong inside those homes. As I developed, I realized that I learned that Arizona was a non-licensed state, yet other states do license this kind of care. So as I developed and learned, I did talk with leaders. I think some of the same leaders that you know, Scott,
Yes.
Don Irish and Bob Daly, who started ASNAHA and started talking about ASNAHA and its principles. I talked with my owner, Larry Ezra, who was one of the original members, not a founding member, but one of the original members of ASNAHA when it started, and what the importance was there. And we have some slides here today that we'll briefly go through. I won't spend a whole ton of time directly on the slides, because a lot of this information is available on the ASNAHA website. But if we want to go to the first slide.
Zach, before we jump there, let me just kind of set this up for us, all right? So as Zach's getting into this, and we'll go through this information, Options for Senior Living, referral and placement, we operate in a similar non-regulated, non-licensed environment or space. In Arizona, home care is non-licensed and non-regulated. ASNAHA was the first of the trade organizations that we followed that set up standards and best practices that members would voluntarily agree to adhere to.
Yes.
And when we started the Pastors Group, which is the professional association of specialists, we did a similar model, followed similar bylaws and practices, and set up those best practices so that agencies who weren't required to follow a certain law or set of laws would follow these. Some of them were just common sense kinds of things, but best practices. And we established best practices. I'm imagining ASNAHA did something similar by getting consensus from other industries and other professionals that we would engage with. So we created this set of best practices. So today, well, Options has committed ourselves this year to doing more education and more intentional programs like this one. We want to talk about today operating in that non-regulated space. How do we do this? Why ASNAHA is such an important part of the picture? And there are parallels between ASNAHA and Pastors. And now in our world, we've even given rise to the National Placement and Referral Alliance. It's our first national endeavor to do this same kind of work on a national level. So that just kind of sets it up for us. And we're just trying to bring the right information to the community. So tell us about ASNAHA. And your company was involved from the beginning. 5 years ago, you thought the opportunity for board made sense. What was that all about, or how did you decide to? Because if you know Zach at all, Well, people tell me I'm kind of wound up and gung ho about all this from my world. You should meet Zach. He's a little passionate about what you're doing. So talk about that.
Yeah, and I am passionate about it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that, and it goes back again to my getting into this world from an objective viewpoint. You know, I wasn't born into home care, born into healthcare. I stumbled into home care, and as I was developing and learning and looking at home care and realizing what it was kind of infuriating that a lot of the home care perception at the time, when I started anyways, was adult babysitting. It wasn't this healthcare part of it. And you have a lot of bad actors out there who help bring the industry down.
Right.
In that sense. So when you look at things like licensure in other states or why certain industries are licensed, it's because there has to be a certain level of care or level of appreciation to that industry to make sure that that industry isn't looked at as fraudulent or.
I totally get that because as a nurse, my degree's in nursing from Arizona State. Same thing. I didn't want to be considered. People used to call me the bounty hunter, scalp takers, and you just figured that people were thinking of you less than a professional, maybe the necessary evil. You don't want to be known as adult babysitting, but if your owner is a nurse, and I would think this way, the person I'm taking care of has a diagnosis or a condition, and so your company has developed particular care paths and in a way to care for someone who has particular conditions, which makes a ton of sense. Instead of just a concept like we just send a companion over there to make tuna fish sandwiches and hang out with them, right? So there's a real focus and an interest in the person's health.
And it's kind of come full circle now too with all the readmission talk and all those buzzwords out there too about how home care does play that really critical role, but we're still not licensed by any
and not heard by the healthcare system to the degree that we both want to be heard. Sure.
Correct.
Sure. Well, talk about the Asnaha's generation, your involvement in the board, and take us through some of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see the first slide here. It's been up for a while, but this is the reason why Asnaha was created, was because there was no licensure or set of standards for home care in Arizona. And I want to go back to Scott's point a little bit about getting that group of people together to have a consensus on what it means to what it means to have best practices, what kind of regulations or credentialing are we going to do for an industry to raise that bar, to make it legitimate. And there's a slide later on, and again we'll just go over those quick, but that states that there's a some people look at Asnaha or pastors for that sake as a governing body, as we are going to go in and audit your business and tell you how to run your business and how to operate, and that couldn't be further from the truth. The point of Asnaha is to set a baseline, set a bunch of standards and rules and credentialing in place that I think you put it best earlier as common sense.
Some of it's just common sense.
It's just common sense that this is what we do to make sure that there are things like senior abuse is being mitigated, fraud is being mitigated. There's an awful video I saw not too long ago from Houston with a independent contractor, an internet-based contractor model that does background checks and everything else, but they don't manage their care. And this lady in Houston was physically being abused by the caretaker. And it's a horrible, and the only reason it was caught is because the son, who's out of town, visits, sees bruises. Mom can't tell him what the bruises are for because she's in late stages dementia, and he has to put a hidden camera up to catch this in act. And how frightening and horrible is that?
And how vulnerable people are. When you said they're in their home, in the privacy of their home, and you're taking care of someone who's got dementia, who can't speak for themselves or don't have great recall anymore, anything could happen, and probably does.
Exactly, but it won't with a place like Asnaha.
It's our one way to put a stamp of yes, and when companies do that, you guys, I know that a lot of companies don't sign that best practice. They choose not to, and in my world, I ask the question why. Some of these aren't big deals. It's just we ask them to sign best practices and be accountable via a grievance procedure. Asnaha has something similar, I'm sure, that keeps people on the trail, so to speak, And like you said, we're just setting the minimum standards. You can exceed our standards, that'd be fine, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right. But these are the basic things that we want all companies to follow in our world and placement, and of course your world. So, anyways, back to your point here.
Yeah, if we go to the next slide, you'll see that Eisenhower was there in 2007, and the organization accomplished the establishment by following having all members follow the code of business ethics and a minimum standards of service. That again goes back to the fact that we just wanted a baseline to say this industry is legitimate. Mm-hmm. We want to be looked at as professionals. This is what we have to do that. And there's no governance outside of that. It's just that you are putting skin in the game by becoming a member, by paying your $300 fee,
yeah,
and just saying, I agree with this. I agree that this industry needs to be held accountable, and we need to be doing best practices and causing awareness to the fact that there could be people being taken advantage of out there. We tried to push for licensure a while ago. We've seen other states not be so successful with that.
Right.
Sometimes our politicians, even if they have great hearts, they're not in it, so they don't really know what they're legislating, and we see problems that I won't go into specifics because it's outside of this topic, but right now ASNHA just wants to be a voice for the industry, and something that if legislation wanted to do anything would reach out to ASNHA as a partner in that and as a leader to guide them. So for the next slide, you'll see the latest legislation that was passed for our industry, for our arena in 2015. And anyone that's on the call, if you work with home care companies, and if anyone on the call is a home care company in ASNHA and you're not handing out a form, a disclosure form that's in accordance with SB 1401, you can find it on the ASNHA website. But every company should be following this law. There is penalties. I think it's up to 6 months in jail.
Oh,
yeah, if you don't follow it. The hard part again is that there's not a whole lot of policing this bill, but it is a law. So it's up to, again, our community, up to ASNHA, up to passers, up to options, up to anyone in the industry who's working with our community to make sure that the companies we are working with, the professionals we are working with, are following these types of laws.
Currently in this year's Legislative Sessions Act, House Bill 2527 is being considered as an amendment to this bill. It was introduced by some of our friends in the assisted living world, authored and sponsored by Leading Age of Arizona. They're a trade organization for a number of the assisted living communities, and in that it will be our first requirement of disclosure. And there's some things in that. So passers, NPRA is involved in this. We'll be getting the first legislation around us or restraint and shaping of our business is coming right now. However, we want to be at the table like you guys do for later. What we were visiting with another trade organization last week, and she said you either be at the table or you're going to be on the menu at some point.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We want to be at the table proactively. We've created a government affairs committee locally now, and we're activating that. We're doing the same on the national level, so that we can guide people. But you talk about legislation and you talk about licensure. And so this is legislation or a piece of legislation or a law that governs a fragment of the whole picture.
Yes.
Licensure would encompass the whole shooting match and have regulatory compliance, similar like the State Board of Nursing does to all the nurses.
Correct.
You're talking about that, which that effort has fallen short so far.
Yeah, so they've attempted a couple times. ASNHA, by they I mean ASNHA and the industry as a whole. At this moment, I don't think there's any real push for any sort of state licensure, because again, the community can figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
I mean, with partners like ASNHA, things like passers, we as healthcare professionals can hold that standard.
Some law will help us, but we don't have to be completely fully licensed. We're taking a tack at our national level now that we've embarked on a trail to create the first national credential for individual agents. So like a certified financial planner in the financial planning world, that's held in high regard or high esteem. We're going to create our own industry specific education program with a endpoint of having a credential that I can acquire for my own industry. we're going to go that tack. And again, of course, education and advocacy is the essence of what a trade organization like ASNH and Passers and PRA, that's what it's all about. Educate, advocate, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think that's great.
Yeah, well.
It needs to be. It's unregulated.
Yeah, so you got to have a higher degree of confidence in the community for what you guys do and what we're trying to do too. Yeah.
Absolutely. So with all of this, if we go to the next slide, I'll touch on the employees versus contractors just briefly, but everything in this non-regulated world somehow always comes back to this discussion with the employees versus contractors. And at the end of the day, it's not really a question about what kind of business you want to run. It's what is legal and best practice. If you're a company saying that you are bonded and insured, that better be your whole company. That better not just be your office staff. That better be everybody that's under your umbrella that is bonded and insured. If you are a contractor model, that's, again, ASNH doesn't have any members who are contractors, but we have always investigated and always will investigate contract models that will follow the Department of Land Labor standards, meaning that you cannot manage an independent contractor, meaning if you are contracting a caregiver, they will go out to a client's home and they have to manage themselves. So that's where ASNH kind of has a discrepancy with the contractor model, because who's managing that care. And then when you go look at a video from Houston of a lady getting abused, physically abused, because she is not being managed appropriately. That's where the self-regulating, the associations like ASNH have to step in and say, wait.
Well, and because I know ASNH and I know you and I know that the principals, Stacey and I were just doing a presentation for another group just this afternoon. And we talked about this because one of the options that people have is to bring care in. It's not always go out, bring care in. We talked about these things today. And this group of professionals that were sitting in the room were like, what? These people are not employees all the time? I'm like, they're not. And this is why ASNH, and this is why it's important to know this issue.
Absolutely. Right. And that's why the logo of ASNH is so important, because as soon as you see that logo, you know what it is. You know what you're getting. As far as best practices in this in the credentialing. So the next slide, the next couple of slides actually will show you just some of the overalls of what our standards and of ethics and service are. All of this information can again be found on the website, which I've included there. So we'll leave this slide up just for a little bit, so you can, if you need to copy down that website, and that's the direct page to that standards page. But again, a lot of this stuff, from the outside looking in, if you look at it, you would say common sense. I mean, this isn't hard things to get accomplished as a professional, as someone who really cares about the care that they're providing. I mean, that's what we are doing. We are not the babysitting industry. We are the caregiving industry. That's it.
Have you heard this? Have you heard this concern? Because this comes back to me at Pastor sometimes. You let anybody in as ASNH, wouldn't you? If they sign the best practices, you let anybody in. And the answer is by law, you got it. Because they're a trade organization. If they sign the best practices, we are not regulatory. Your ASNH is not regulatory. Right. So we have to allow people to enter and fail rather than scream about on the front side. So I know people that would be considered, they have a reputation in our business, but if they come to the table and sign those best practices and promise to adhere to it, our recourse is zero.
Except for kicking them out of them.
Except for if you have to call them in. Somebody asked me once, did you ever kick anybody off the island? And it was actually a leader in your industry said, have you ever kicked anybody off the island yet? And I'm like, you mean like talk to them about our best practice? I go, actually, I've talked to 2 separate companies on 2 separate issues at 2 separate times, and they didn't like to be questioned, and so they chose to take their ball and go home. I'm curious that as on your board, have you had to talk to any companies? We don't have to name them, but have they picked up their ball and gone home, or do they rally and
That's a great question, and there are multiple instances of yes. Sometimes we'll have a question. The great thing about ASNH is it's been around for so long, and that a lot of the companies that are part have been around so long, and we know most of the companies in this industry collectively. I might not know somebody, but someone on the board knows that.
Sure.
And when they apply, we will always, if there's a question of validity, we have a committee that will go out. Somebody will go out from the board to talk to them and see what's going on. There was a case where I had to go out to a business myself, personal experience, and they didn't have. They said they worked out of an office and had all the proper work, and when I went there, it was just a closet, and the closet had no Department of Labor board postings, nothing. They had no file cabinet for for employees or anything. And, yeah, and I asked where all that was, and there really wasn't any solution except for it was on a computer at home. And if you have someone from an association like ASNA coming out to vet you, you would hope that all those things would be in place.
Sure.
So obviously we had to do some coaching. There was a 3-month period where they were, I think it was called like a probationary app, where they weren't an official member and they had to get all those things in place. And once they said they got all those things in place, then yes, we had to let them in. So just like you said, if they signed the paper adhering to these standards and adhering to these things, then yes.
And I took that challenge as a new trade organization, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I met a guy yesterday at the pastor's meeting yesterday. He's new to the business. Bought a franchise. He now has a business. Boom. He's now a senior living advisor expert, right? 2 months in, he's an expert. And yet he said, "Can we have coffee?" And I can't tell you how many colleagues, because of their commitment to pastors, I want to defend that brand and I want to help my colleagues. They're going to do this business with or without my help or our help as an organization. So if I can support them and coach them up, like you said, and get them up to functional level, they're going to give us a better name. Later.
Absolutely. It raises the industry as a whole. The more legitimate competitors I have, the happier I am.
Yeah.
Because it just raises the bar in the industry. It pushes us all to challenge ourselves to be the best.
I'm sitting in there's a little restaurant brew pub up in Pine, Arizona called That Brewery. Give a plug, my friends at That. So on a Saturday night, I'm sitting there minding my own business. I used to have a house up there, and I'm sitting there. I'm sitting there watching the music that night, and the guy sitting next to me starts talking to me about what I do. That's right. We just normally started chatting up, and he's a school teacher, and him and his wife are retired and live in Pine now. And I told him what I did, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I worked with somebody that helped me find the next place for my mom in Scottsdale." And he mentioned the guy's name. Well, Steve was one of those guys that when he bought his franchise like 6 years ago, he knew nothing about the business. I spent some time with him. He joined pastors. He now serves on the board of directors. And he had a great experience with Steve. And so I like to hear, like you just said, it's better for all of us if we're all doing it better.
Right.
Because there's no shortage of people aging in our neighborhoods.
Right. Well, just it challenges the community. I mean, so when I talk about ASNA, when I do speeches or presentations on ASNA, I tell everyone this is not home care.
Yeah.
It's us. It's everybody.
Yeah.
It's you. Do you live in Arizona? ASNA has for you.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's your community. You got a neighbor that's elderly that might need home care. Do you have a mother? Do you have anyone you know? Yes. Chances are yes. You know somebody doing it or needing it or had it. And that's what ASNA is there to do, is to raise that standard, raise that bar in the industry. So, right. I don't know how much more time
looks like we got about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll take some questions or whatever. So roll through what you want to touch on.
Yeah, we'll go slide 10. Just go through the standards real quick here. Again, going back to it, it'll be the ASNA governing policies. We don't tell the previous slide. Previous slide. There it is. Okay, so we don't tell businesses how to operate. There are currently over 100 businesses who are members. So again, it's a plethora of companies. We have associate members, hospices, home health. Anyone who cares about the population that we serve and the population that we live in, ASNA is for you. I just gave a quick example of how we don't, at the bottom there, how we don't govern. I mean, we as members, as ASNA as a group, has decided that conducting face-to-face interviews is the best practice, is to meet your potential employee and before you hire them. But we don't tell you how to do that. We don't tell you what questions to ask or what tests to take. We just say that you should meet this person face to face. So it's just a quick example of that line of there's practices and then there's governance. We don't do governance. Right. The next points of caregiving is the next slide. Again, I'm going to run through this since we have a couple This is about the cost and the value. You got a lot of things about home care to talk about cost and value. Again, going back to the healthcare continuum, insurance. Yes, everyone wants to talk about insurance and it pays for it, but when all is said and done, and we look at the numbers, home care is the cheapest possible way to care for yourself.
Yes.
And it enables you to care for yourself.
Right.
It gives you that direction. Where you're in a hospital, you can't do that. The doctors and the nurses have to do that. Right. Caregiving gives you that enabled ability. Then we're going to scroll all the way down. Let's go all the way to Asnaha News, since we only have about probably 30 seconds here. All this is good information. I'm sure we can share the PowerPoint if anyone wants
Sure.
to. Go to the second to last slide. It says Asnaha News in the top right corner. Okay, so I just wanted to give you guys a couple quick updates about what Asnaha is doing now, so that you get an idea of now the history of Asnaha,
Yep.
where we've come from, and what we're doing, and today what we're still working on. Right now we are about the community. I mean, that has been the mission from day one. The healthcare community now is getting very well versed with Asnaha, and the name's out there a lot. The brand's gotten strong, but now we want to get into the actual community outside of our little bubble here. Currently working with local fire departments, APS, and their community programs to educate about home care services and the unregulated markets. Specifically that, about the pitfalls and what you need to look for.
Who sees these people more than our first responders? Right?
Oh, exactly.
Right.
You know, Phoenix Fire, the first responders, Right Care Foundation, Phoenix Fire, their community assistance program, they have now agreed to use the Asnaha list exclusively. They just had resources.
Yeah.
They didn't know that there was this organization that
And the separation, and the people that are in this pool are ascribing to that level of,
Yes.
of expertise.
Yeah, and we've separated the list for all text providers, with location of the companies, exactly what Phoenix wanted. They have that now. So when they get their frequent callers, they will now have resources to reach out to Asnaha, to reach out members of Asnaha. Hopefully Grandpa, who's sitting in his chair and can't get out of it, won't be calling the fire department anymore, saving us tax money and
I
resources.
picked up the Asnaha brochure at the Better Business Bureau last month when I was over there.
That's excellent.
Yeah, so you're over there too.
Yeah, just getting out to the community, letting them know we exist, letting them know their importance. Also reaching out to the NCIA approved caregiving schools right now to get Asnaha into their curriculum to teach prospective caregivers where to go when you're looking for a job.
Gotcha.
What's going to protect them? This is not just the elder we're talking about. We're talking about the employee as well. They don't get abused.
They're not getting abused.
Right.
They're not put in a bad situation.
Right, I've
So they
heard
don't have any recourse.
Plenty of people who did not know, they come over here and had no idea what they were with,
Right.
compared to coming over to a place like Affordable Home Care and what they can get here. So,
Wow. We're at about a minute or two out. Zach, you want to share anything else before we wrap up? And we can sure ask for questions if anybody wants to. Julie, I'm not sure how they get us a question, but I'm sure there's a way, or you're going to tell us here. But Zach and I could probably talk for about 4 or 5 more hours.
days, weeks,
Or whatever. So anything else you want to share?
No, I just thank you again, Scott and Stacy and Options, for having me. And yeah, if anyone has any questions about Asnaha, feel free to reach out to me at any time. You can also reach out to Asnaha directly. And a lot of good resources on there. And again, yeah, I'm here for you guys if you need anything. So
This program will be posted on our website, Zach, on optionsforseniorliving.com. Julie can connect with you guys if any of your families, people you talk to, whatever you want to use this. And certainly Zach's willing to share the PowerPoint presentation. So let us know how we can get that out. If you're interested, we can get that out to you as well. So listen, you guys, it has been a real fun opportunity to hang out with you this afternoon and talk. Zach, let's do it again.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, you guys. This is Scott and Zach signing off. Have a great afternoon.